The galaxy desired peace, but humanity refused to shake hands part. Once the stars had watched silently for eons as life flickered into being on a small blue planet, tucked away in an unremarkable spiral arm of the Milky Way. For most of that time, the galaxy paid no mind. But when humanity finally reached beyond its cradle, sending fragile metal shells into the void, whispering radio waves into the dark, the galaxy noticed. And after 3 centuries of quiet order, the Galactic Concord decided it was time to act. The Concord was not an empire, nor a single government. It was a union of 12 species who had once warred, schemed, and nearly destroyed one another before choosing peace. That peace was hard-won, maintained through treaties, shared technology, and a strict rule. No species would interfere with another until it proved capable of spaceflight and self-governance. Once that threshold was crossed, the Concord would make contact, offer guidance, and invite the new member into the fold. Most accepted. A few resisted. None had ever said no. Ambassador Kalen of the Vireth was chosen for first contact with humanity, tall and slender, with smooth, moist skin that shimmered faintly in changing hues. Kalen moved with the calm grace of a being who had never known true fear. The Vireth were natural diplomats, telepathic, patient, and deeply empathetic. They believed every conflict could be unraveled with enough listening. Kalen carried that belief like a second heart as the ship Harmony's Echo drifted into the outer edges of the Sol system. From orbit, Earth looked both beautiful and broken. Swirling clouds hid scars of old wars. Sprawling cities pulsed with light, and oceans shimmered under the sun like liquid glass. Kalen felt a strange ache. Not pain, but sorrow, for a species that had climbed so far while dragging so much darkness behind it. Still, hope remained. Humans had ended their world wars. They had stopped poisoning their own air. They had even begun to care for one another across borders. Perhaps they were ready. The Harmony's Echo sent out a simple message in every major human language, repeating it in gentle loops. We come in peace. We wish to speak. We offer friendship. The signal was clean, unencrypted, and carried no hidden commands, only warmth, curiosity, and respect. On Earth, the message triggered chaos. In Geneva, President Daniel Cruz stood in the United Nations Emergency Chamber, his face pale under the harsh lights. Around him, ambassadors shouted over one another, some demanding immediate response, others calling for silence until more was known. Intelligence agencies scrambled to verify the signal's origin. Scientists confirmed it was not a hoax. The voice, calm, genderless, almost musical, was real, and it came from a ship parked just beyond Mars. Cruz called an emergency session of the Global Defense Council. General Luke Bennett sat at the far end of the table, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. Luke was in his late 50s with a face carved by decades of command and loss. He had fought in the Pacific Resource Wars, led peacekeeping missions in Africa, and rebuilt military alliances after the great cyber collapse of 2048. He trusted no one who smiled too easily, and this alien voice sounded like it had never frowned in its life. It's a trap, Luke said flatly when asked for his opinion. They show up out of nowhere, offer us paradise, and ask for nothing. That's how you get sheep to walk into the slaughterhouse. Maria Santos, the lead diplomat for First Contact, shook her head. They've shared medical data already. Nanite designs that could cure cancer, Alzheimer's, even aging. They're giving it away, Luke, freely. Then they want something bigger, Luke replied. Control, influence, maybe our planet, maybe our minds. Cruz listened carefully. He wanted to believe in peace, but he also remembered history. How every peaceful empire in human memory had started with gifts before demanding obedience. He authorized a cautious reply. Thank you, we hear you, we are preparing to respond. Nothing more. Meanwhile, deep beneath the rocky hills of Colorado, Project Ironclad hummed to life. Luke had pushed for it for years. A secret program to build warships that could fight in deep space using weapons beyond conventional physics. Now, with an alien presence at their doorstep, funding was approved overnight. Engineers worked around the clock to install graviton emitters on the 3 prototype vessels, Odyssey, Vanguard, and Sovereign. These weapons didn't fire bullets or lasers. They bent gravity itself, creating ripples that could tear metal apart from the inside. Untested. Terrifying. Necessary, Luke believed. Back in orbit, Kalen waited. Days passed. The humans sent no delegation, no counter-message, no sign of trust. The ambassador's skin dimmed to a soft gray, a Vireth sign of concern. Through telepathic sensors, Kalen picked up flickers of human emotion. Fear, curiosity, anger, hope. It was a storm of contradictions, unlike any species the Conquered had ever met. Finally, a small shuttle launched from Earth. It carried Maria Santos and a team of scientists. They docked with the Harmony's Echo under strict quarantine protocols. When Maria stepped onto the alien deck, she found Kalen waiting, standing perfectly still, hands open at its sides. "You came," Kalen sent, not with sound, but as a gentle thought that bloomed in Maria's mind like a warm breeze. "We did," she replied aloud, voice trembling slightly. "But we don't know if we should." Kalen tilted its head. "Why not?" "Because every time someone offers us peace," Maria said, "they end up wanting to own us." The ambassador was silent for a long moment. Then it extended one long webbed hand, palm up. "We do not wish to own you. We wish to walk beside you." Maria looked at the hand. It was strange, smooth, glowing, faintly blue. She thought of Luke's warnings, of the graviton cannons being welded into steel hulls back home, of the fear in her president's eyes. But she also thought of children dying from diseases that could be cured tomorrow. Slowly, she reached out. But on Earth, in a darkened command bunker, Luke Bennett watched the live feed of that handshake, and he gave a quiet order. "Activate Ironclad. Full readiness, just in case." The galaxy had offered peace. Humanity reached out but kept its other hand on the trigger. The galaxy desired peace, but humanity refused to shake hands part to after the first handshake in orbit. Hope flickered across Earth like a weak but steady flame. Maria Santos returned from the Harmony's Echo with more than just words. She brought data crystals filled with cures, energy designs, and maps of safe star lanes. Scientists wept when they saw the nanite schematics. Doctors whispered that within a year, no child would die from leukemia again. For a few bright days, it seemed humanity had finally stepped into a better future. Ambassador Kalen requested permission to land on Earth, not in a military zone, not near any capital, but in Geneva, the city of treaties, of neutral ground. The Verith did not travel with guards or weapons. They came with scholars, healers, and teachers. Their only demand was a table, clean water, and honest conversation. President Daniel Cruz agreed. The world watched as Kalen's shuttle touched down on a quiet tarmac surrounded by green hills. The ambassador stepped out slowly, its skin shimmering silver in the morning light. Crowds lined the fences, some holding signs that read "Welcome" in a dozen languages, others clutching rosaries or protest banners. Maria walked beside Kalen, not as a guard but as a friend. Inside the United Nations building, the real talks began. The Concord offered 3 gifts. First, medical nanites that could repair cells, reverse aging, and eliminate all known diseases. Second, clean fusion reactors small enough to power a village but strong enough to light a city, forever with no waste. Third, access to the Galactic Archive, a library of knowledge from 12 civilizations including histories, art, engineering, and even philosophies on peace. In return, the Conquered asked for little. Humanity would sign a non-aggression pact, promising not to attack other spacefaring species. It would agree to limit its military expansion beyond the Sol system until it understood galactic law, and it would allow a small Concord observer team, no more than 10 beings, to live on Earth and help with cultural exchange. To Maria, it sounded fair. To many world leaders, it sounded like salvation, but to General Luke Bennett, it sounded like the first threat of a leash. From his office in the Pentagon, Luke studied the treaty draft with cold eyes. He saw the fine print. Observer team may request access to defense facilities for transparency. He saw the phrase "limit military expansion" and knew it meant Earth could never build another warship without permission. He remembered how the Concord had dealt with the Krell, a species that refused integration 2 centuries ago. The Krell vanished from records soon after. No war was declared. No battle was fought. They simply disappeared. Luke didn't trust silence. He called in Captain Eli Morris, a young intelligence officer with a sharp mind and no love for politics. "Find me something," Luke said. "Anything that shows the Concord isn't as clean as they pretend." Eli worked for 3 days straight. He scoured old galactic records, cross-referenced trade logs, and decoded fragmented signals from deep space. Then he found it. A distress call buried in noise from a former Concord member world. The message was broken but clear enough. They said it was peace, but they took our ships, our children, Our choice, it wasn't proof, but it was enough. Luke ordered a team to alter surveillance footage from Mars orbit. In the original clip, a Concorde science vessel drifted near an abandoned human mining station scanning for debris. In the edited version, the ship's sensors locked onto Earth's hidden nuclear silos beneath the lunar surface. The timestamp was real. The targeting data was fake. The leak hit global networks the next morning. Panic spread like wildfire. Talk shows screamed about alien spies. Militias formed in rural towns, swearing to defend Earth with rifles and faith. Even nations that had supported the treaty began to waver. Why would peaceful beings scan nuclear sites? The question echoed in every capital. Maria tried to calm the storm. She held press conferences, showed raw data, invited scientists to verify the scans. But fear moves faster than facts. During the final summit in Geneva, tensions hung thick in the air. Kalen sat at the long table, calm as ever, while human delegates argued in hushed, angry tones. Then, without warning, Kalen stood. The room fell silent. Slowly, with deliberate grace, the ambassador performed the Virith ritual of trust. It bowed low, arms open, palms up, exposing its throat and chest, the most vulnerable parts of its body. Among the Virith, this gesture meant, I place my life in your hands. Maria, without thinking, mirrored the bow. For a moment, the room breathed together. Even the skeptics leaned forward, touched by the raw sincerity of it. But in the observation gallery above, Luke Bennett watched. He saw Kalen's skin shift from silver to a soft, steady blue, a sign of emotional truth according to Virith biology reports. He saw Maria's tears, and for the first time, doubt flickered in his chest. Still, he crushed it. Peace isn't given, he whispered to Eli, who stood beside him. It's taken and kept. After the summit, the Concorde waited for Earth's final answer. President Cruz wanted to say yes. The people were divided. The military was on edge. Maria begged for trust, but Luke made one last move. He sent a private message to every major news outlet, along with the doctored footage and a single line. Would you hand your house keys to a stranger who says he only wants to help? The next day, public support for the treaty collapsed. Cruz called an emergency cabinet meeting. Voices rose, tempers flared. In the end, the president made a choice, not to join, not to reject, but to delay. We need more time, he announced. More verification, more discussion. Kalen accepted the delay with quiet grace, but the ambassador's skin stayed gray for the rest of the week. Back at Project Ironclad, Luke gave new orders. Speed up the graviton tests. I want all 3 ships combat ready in 60 days. On the surface, Earth smiled and talked of peace. Beneath it, steel was forged, circuits were wired, and weapons were loaded. The Concorde believed humanity was just cautious. Luke knew better. Humanity wasn't cautious. It was preparing. The galaxy desired peace, but humanity refused to shake hands. Part 3 weeks passed in a tense quiet. The Concorde ship Harmony's Echo remained in orbit, patient as stone. Ambassador Kalen stayed in Geneva, meeting with scientists, teachers, even schoolchildren. It spoke softly, answered every question, and never once mentioned the stalled treaty. Maria Santos visited often, bringing coffee and quiet conversation. They talked about stars, about loss, about what peace really meant. For a while, it almost felt normal. But beneath that calm surface, Earth was changing. Project Ironclad moved faster than anyone expected. Deep in hidden shipyards near the asteroid belt, the 3 human dreadnoughts, Odyssey, Vanguard, and Sovereign, were nearing completion. Their hulls were layered with adaptive armor, their engines tuned to near-silent operation, and their weapons, the graviton lances, had passed every test. They could now punch a hole in space itself, creating ripples that crushed enemy ships from the inside without leaving a single burn mark. Luke Bennett called them ghost cannons. Meanwhile, Earth's military quietly redrew its borders in space. What had once been open zones near Pluto and the Kuiper Belt were now declared sovereign defense perimeters. Any unauthorized vessel entering would be hailed, warned, and if it did not leave, fired upon. The order was signed by President Cruz himself. Though his hand shook as he did it, he told himself it was just caution. Luke called it preparation. Then came the incident. A Concorde patrol vessel, the Zenthra's Watch, was responding to a distress signal from a derelict freighter drifting near Pluto. The freighter had once belonged to a minor trading species, long gone bankrupt. Its beacon had been silent for years, until it suddenly blared to life, screaming in a dead language. The Concorde, bound by its own laws to answer all distress calls, sent the Zenthra's Watch, a small science and rescue ship with no weapons, only sensors and med bays. As it approached the freighter, it crossed into Earth's newly declared perimeter. Luke Bennett was in the command center when the alert came in. Unidentified vessel entering Zone Delta 7, the officer said. No response to hails. Identify it, Luke ordered. Scans match Concorde registry. It's the Zenthra's Watch. Civilian class, unarmed. Luke's jaw tightened. They know the rules. Hail them again. Full warning. The message went out. This is United Earth Defense. You are in a restricted zone. Power down engines and prepare for inspection or leave immediately. But the Zenthra's Watch did not respond. Not because it refused, but because its comms were damaged from the long drift through radiation belts. The distress call had fried half its systems. The crew, 3 Virith and 2 Zorath, were busy trying to reboot life support, unaware they had crossed an invisible line drawn by a species they barely understood. On Earth, the silence was taken as defiance. Luke gave the order. 2 frontier patrol ships locked on with kinetic cannons and fired. The shots were precise, meant to disable, not destroy. But the Zenthra's Watch was fragile, built for rescue, not combat. One hit tore through its engine core. The ship twisted, broke apart, and vanished in a cloud of ice and metal. All 5 crew members died before they could send a final message. The galaxy reacted instantly. Within hours, the Concorde Assembly convened an emergency session. Outrage poured from every delegation. The Virith wept. The Zorath, a proud reptilian species with a warrior code, demanded blood. Even the usually calm crystalline beings of the Zenth Collective pulsed with anger. How could a species that had just been offered cures and knowledge respond with murder? Ambassador Kalen, still on Earth, received the news in private. It sat alone in its quarters for a full day, skin dark as storm clouds. When Maria came to see it, Kalen spoke only one thought into her mind. They did not understand. Back on the Concorde homeworld, the High Council met behind closed doors. The debate was fierce. Some argued for immediate sanctions, a total blockade of Earth cutting it off from all future contact. Others pushed for a show of force to make humanity understand the cost of its actions. Only a few, mostly older Virith elders, whispered that this might still be a mistake. A tragedy born of fear, not malice, but the Council had to act. They sent an ultimatum. It arrived not as a gentle message, but as a sharp, cold broadcast on every human channel. The voice was not Kalen's. It was the deep, resonant tone of High Speaker Vorlak of the Zorath. People of Earth, it said, you have killed peaceful envoys under a flag of mercy. You have broken the first law of the Concorde. Do no harm to those who seek only to help. You have 30 cycles, 72 of your hours, to comply with the following. Surrender your military command structure to Concorde oversight, deactivate all weapons beyond planetary defense, and accept a peacekeeping garrison of 500 beings on your world. Failure to comply will be met with unified enforcement. The message ended. Silence followed. In Geneva, Maria ran to President Cruz's office. We have to explain, she pleaded. It was a mistake. A terrible, awful mistake, but not an act of war. Cruz looked exhausted. They don't see it that way. And with that footage Luke leaked, they think we're already hostile, he called Luke. In the Pentagon bunker, Luke listened to the ultimatum without flinching. When Cruz asked what they should do, Luke didn't hesitate. We don't surrender. We don't invite occupiers onto our soil. And we sure as hell don't hand over our military. Then what? Cruz asked, voice low. Luke turned to the holographic display showing the 3 dreadnoughts nearly ready. We show them we're not prey. That night, in a sealed room beneath the Rocky Mountains, Luke revealed the full truth of Project Ironclad to the president. Not just the ships, but the tactics, how they would use the sun's gravity well to hide, how they would strike fast and vanish, how they would disable, not destroy, if they could. Cruz stared at the plans. He thought of the children who would never get those cures now. He thought of the dead crew on the Zenthra's Watch. He thought of Earth alone in the dark. If we fight, he said, there's no going back. If we kneel, Luke replied, there's no future. Outside, the stars watched, and for the first time, humanity chose not peace, not war, but defiance. The galaxy desired peace, but humanity refused to shake hands. Part 4. The ultimatum expired with no reply from Earth. Not a message, not a signal, not even static. The Concorde took it as final. Across 12 worlds, fleets mobilized. Shipyards that had slept for generations roared back to life. The Zorath sent their armored cruisers. The Virith contributed shield carriers. The Zenth lent their gravity benders, and 8 other species added their strength. 500 warships gathered at the edge of known space. A wall of metal and light pointed at Sol. They called it the Unity Armada. Their mission was clear. Bring Earth to heel with force if needed, but without total destruction. They still hoped to save humanity from itself. On Earth, silence was the strategy. President Cruz had approved Luke Bennett's plan, but only under one condition. No first strike. Humanity would not fire unless fired upon. Luke agreed, though he knew the line would blur fast. While the world held its breath, Earth's fleet vanished. The 3 dreadnoughts, Odyssey, Vanguard, and Sovereign, slipped into the asteroid belts beyond Mars, their engines running cold, their signatures masked by rock and dust. Smaller frigates hid in the shadow of Jupiter's moons. Even old orbital defense platforms powered down, becoming silent metal ghosts against the black. Ambassador Kalin remained in Geneva, now under quiet house arrest. Maria Santos visited daily, bringing news, food, and apologies. "We didn't want this," she said one evening, voice raw. Kalin's skin glowed faintly gold, a Virith sign of sorrow mixed with understanding. "You are afraid," it sent into her mind, "but fear makes poor armor." Maria had no answer. Then the Armada moved. They crossed the Kuiper line like a slow tide, formation perfect, weapons charged but not aimed. They broadcast one final message: stand down, surrender your weapons, let peace return. Earth did not respond. Luke Bennett watched from the command deck of the Odyssey, floating deep in the Pluto debris field. Beside him stood Captain Eli Morris, now promoted, eyes sharp behind his visor. "They're scanning everything," Eli said. "But they're not expecting us here." "Good," Luke said. "Let them look at the empty spaces." The Concorde fleet entered the outer system. They passed Neptune, then Uranus, then Saturn. Still no resistance. Their commanders grew confident. Perhaps humanity had backed down at the last moment. Perhaps the dreadnoughts were myths. They were wrong. When the lead Zorath cruiser crossed the orbit of Jupiter, Luke gave the order. The Vanguard fired first. Its graviton lance pulsed once, a ripple in space no eye could see, 200,000 kilometers away. The Zorath ship shuddered. Its engines collapsed inward, not exploded, crushed by sudden, impossible gravity. The vessel went dark, drifting. Before the Armada could react, the Sovereign struck from behind Titan. It targeted comms arrays, not hulls. One pulse and the entire fleet's network went silent. Ships lost contact with command. Orders vanished. Confusion spread. Then the Odyssey emerged from the sun's corona, using solar radiation to blind enemy sensors. It fired not at ships but at their support drones, small repair and relay units that kept the fleet coordinated. One by one they winked out. Within minutes, the mighty Armada was blind, deaf, and leaderless. What followed was not a battle, but a lesson. Human frigates darted from asteroid cover, launching EMP nets that fried unshielded circuits. Boarding pods, small, fast, and packed with Marines in powered armor, latched onto disabled ships. Inside, human soldiers moved with brutal efficiency, disabling weapons, locking down bridges, and taking crews prisoner without killing them. They used stun rounds, flash charges, and hand-to-hand tactics honed in Earth's worst urban wars. The Concorde had never fought like this. Their wars were grand, open, honorable, ships dueling in clear space, shields flaring, cannons roaring. They did not expect ambushes, sabotage, or enemies who fought like shadows. By the time the Zorath flagship regained partial comms, half the fleet was already neutralized. High Commander Vrex of the Zorath stared at the tactical display in disbelief. "How?" he roared. "They have 3 ships. We have 500. "They do not fight like us," whispered his Virith advisor, skin pale with shock. "They fight like cornered animals. Fast, smart, ruthless." Vrex ordered a full retreat, but it was too late. The human fleet, though small, controlled the battlefield. They herded the remaining ships toward Saturn's rings, where debris and gravity made maneuvering deadly. One by one, conquered vessels powered down, surrendering to avoid total loss. 72 hours after the Armada entered the Sol system, it was over. Not a single human ship was destroyed. Not one human life was lost in combat. The Concorde suffered no deaths either. Only disabled ships and captured crews. It was a victory so clean, so precise it felt unreal. On Earth, news spread slowly. No celebrations erupted. People stood in streets and homes in silence. They had won. But at what cost? President Cruz addressed the world that night. His voice was heavy. We did not seek this fight. But we will not be ruled by fear or force. From this day, Earth stands alone, not as an enemy, but as a free people. In Geneva, Kaylin watched the broadcast. Then it turned to Maria. You refused peace, it sent. But you also refused cruelty, that is, unexpected. Luke Bennett, aboard the Odyssey, looked at the drifting forest of disabled alien ships. He felt no joy, only relief, and a deep, cold certainty. The galaxy would not forget this day. They had come for peace. Humanity had said no, and in saying no, had rewritten the rules of war. The galaxy desired peace. But humanity refused to shake hands. Part 5. In the weeks after the battle, the Sol system became a graveyard of silent ships. 500 vessels from the Concorde Armada floated in neat clusters near Saturn's rings, their engines dark, their crews confined to quarters under human guard. No one fired a shot. No one shouted orders. Everything moved with quiet efficiency. Repaired drones from Earth patched hull breaches to keep the aliens alive. Food, water, and medical supplies were beamed over daily. It was not kindness. It was control. Ambassador Kaylin was finally allowed to return to orbit. Maria Santos accompanied it aboard a small shuttle. As they approached the Harmony's Echo, now surrounded by human patrol craft, Kaylin looked out the viewport at the captured fleet. Its skin pulsed a slow, deep violet, the Virith color of awe mixed with grief. You could have destroyed them, Kaylin sent into Maria's mind. We could have, she replied aloud. But we didn't want slaves. We wanted respect. Back on Earth, the world struggled to understand what had happened. Some called Luke Bennett a hero. Others called him a monster, who had burned humanity's only bridge to the stars. President Cruz walked a thin line, releasing footage of the battle to prove Earth had acted in defense, not aggression. He showed how the Concorde ships had entered declared zones, how comms had failed, how the first shot had come only after repeated warnings. Slowly, public fear turned to pride, then to something quieter: resolve. The Concorde assembly, meanwhile, was in chaos. Species that had stood together for centuries now argued in bitter circles. The Zorith demanded revenge. The Zenth called for isolation. But the Virith elders, led by Elder Malus, spoke of something else. They did not kill, Malus said in the Great Chamber. They disabled. They captured. They fed our prisoners. This is not the act of savages. This is the act of a people who value life but will not bow. The debate lasted days. In the end, the Concorde voted not for war but for withdrawal. All ships would be retrieved. All crews returned, and Earth would be left alone. No blockade. No sanctions. No further contact unless humanity chose to reach out first. It was not forgiveness. It was acknowledgement. Luke Bennett resigned his commission the day the last Concorde ship left the Sol system. He gave no speech, no interview. He simply packed a bag, kissed his daughter goodbye, and drove north into the Montana wilderness. He bought a small cabin near a frozen lake, chopped wood, and watched the stars without fear for the first time in years. He had done what he believed was right. Now he would live with it. Maria Santos was named Earth's chief Xenoliasian officer, a new role created just for her. Her job was not to make treaties but to listen, to watch the skies, to be ready but not eager. She moved into a quiet office in Geneva, filled with books, star maps, and a single photo of her and Kaylin shaking hands in orbit. Months passed. Then a year. Earth changed. Without Concorde cures, scientists worked harder, faster. They reverse-engineered fragments of the data Maria had saved, creating their own nanites, cruder, slower, but human-made. Fusion reactors were built from scratch, powered by ingenuity, not gifts. Humanity learned to stand on its own. Then one clear night a signal came, not a fleet, not a warning, just a single ship, small and unarmed, broadcasting on an old diplomatic frequency. It was Virith. Maria recognized the signature instantly. It was the Harmony's Echo. She went to the spaceport alone. No guards, no cameras, no speeches. When the ramp lowered, Kaylin stepped out just as before. But this time, it was not here as an ambassador of the Concorde. It came as a scholar. We were told to leave you in peace, Kaylin sent gently. But some of us could not stop wondering. Wondering what? Maria asked. Why you refused peace? Kalen replied. Why you chose danger over safety. Why you fought so hard just to be left alone. Maria smiled faintly. Because peace given as a condition isn't peace. It's surrender. We wanted the right to choose our own path, even if it's harder. Kalen was silent for a long moment. Then it extended its hand again. Palm up just like before. This time Maria didn't hesitate. She took it. Over the next year more Virith came, not as envoys but as students. They asked to observe human schools, hospitals, farms, even courtrooms. They watched how humans argued, forgave, built, and broke. They saw riots and rescues, lies and love. They took no notes. They simply watched. Other species noticed. The Zorath sent a single observer, armored and wary. The Zenth floated silently in orbit, studying Earth's gravity wells. None demanded anything. None offered anything. They just looked, and slowly, something new began to grow. Not an alliance, not a treaty, but something rarer. Mutual respect. The galaxy had wanted peace on its terms. Humanity had said no. And in that refusal, it had not found war, but a different kind of peace. One earned, not given. One built on strength, not submission. On a quiet evening in Geneva, Maria stood on a balcony with Kalen, watching the sunset paint the sky in red and gold. Do you think they'll ever truly understand us? She asked. Kalen's skin shimmered soft blue. Perhaps not. But they will no longer assume they know us. And in that moment, under a sky shared by all, humanity was no longer the galaxy's problem. It was its equal.